Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back today again with another video. This one is going to be a continuation of my series on my favorite NBA seasons of all time. So, as I've said in previous videos in this series, and I'll say it again, the basic reason for this video is because I think that there are certain seasons in NBA history that stand out more than others, that are more entertaining than others between the regular season and the postseason, where there are much more interesting storylines than other seasons. So, that is the purpose of this series. I just find that there are certain times where I'm paying a lot more attention to the NBA than usual. Now, of course, I always am paying a ton of attention to the NBA, but there are certain seasons where you just have these things going on that really attract your attention. So, for instance, if we're taking this current season right now, the thing that's probably attracting most of my attention is how the East is so wide open, and any of the top four teams between uh, the Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, and 76ers. I think that each of those teams have a shot at getting out of the East and going to the finals. That's probably like the thing from this season that I find most entertaining and interesting. But there are certain seasons where there are like a lot of storylines like that that really interest me. A big thing for me is parity and not everyone being 41 and 41, but just there being a sense that a lot of different teams could get into the finals and could have a shot to win it all. So a lot of these videos highlight seasons in which there's a lot of different contending teams and the race for getting to the finals and winning it is wide open. This season that I'm going to talk about today is actually a little bit different from that. It's basically the opposite of that, I'd almost say. Not completely the opposite, but somewhat, and that would be the 2015 to 16 NBA season. So now in this season, I'd argue that there weren't a ton of teams that could get into the finals, and it was not wide open whatsoever as far as contending teams. In the East, I think most people saw Cleveland as the team standing out to get to the finals, and then maybe like an outside chance of the underdog Raptors getting to the finals. And in the West, it was basically Golden State or San Antonio. Golden State, of course, is on their historic season where they won 73 games, the highest regular season win total of all time. And then San Antonio, despite not being the one seed, still had probably the best two seed record any team has ever had at 67 and 15. They of course had acquired LaMarcus Aldridge in the offseason, and they were looking really sharp with him, Tim Duncan, Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker, Ginobili. The whole gang was there. Probably the best regular season I have ever seen out of the Spurs. Honestly, they just had so much power to them. I was really shocked that they did as well as they did during the regular season. Other interesting storylines from the East were that between the 3 seed and the 6 seed, you actually had no difference in record. The Heat, Hawks, Celtics, and Hornets all had 48 wins, so the 3 through 6 all had the same record, and then all four of those teams faced each other in the first round. The Heat playing the Hornets and the Hawks playing the Celtics. Then you had rounding out the East the Pacers and the Pistons, and then the West you had Golden State, San Antonio, then the Thunder with 55 wins, the Clippers with 53, Trailblazers surprising everyone as the fifth seed with 44 wins, Dallas with 42, Memphis with 42, and then Houston with 41, which a lot of people were surprised by. The season before, I think they won 55 or 56 games, and they were the 2 seed. But this season, they were the 8 seed with 41 wins, largely disappointing people. This marked Dwight Howard's last season in Houston. There was a lot of tension between him and the rest of the team that season, but you still had James Harden balling out. Let's see here. Other notable things that were happening. The first time the Bulls didn't make the playoffs in I think 7 seasons was this year. They made it in, let's see here, 09, 10, and then 11 through 15. They made it all those years, but this is the first year in a while that they didn't make it. This was the first year that the Pacers made it after Paul George had come back, and they were just a mediocre team, to be honest. In the West, the big, I think, surprising storyline, besides Golden State with their win total, was Portland being the 5 seed when they had lost 4 of their 5 starters. In the offseason, they had lost Robin Lopez, LaMarcus Aldridge, Wesley Matthews, and Nicholas Batum. But they still made the playoffs, and everyone was pretty dang shocked, I must admit. As far as the playoffs go, there were some entertaining series. Uh, so in the East, in the first round, you had Miami and Charlotte go 7 games, and then Toronto and Indiana go 7 games, which is pretty cool. Both of the top seeds winning, and then Toronto and Miami went to 7 games in the next round, with Toronto winning. Okay, let's see here. Atlanta and Boston went 6 games. If you don't know, I sort of have this barometer that if a series goes 6 games or 7 games, then it's a competitive good series. So that was a competitive good series in my book. Cleveland and Toronto went 6 games. This is an example of a 6 game series that really didn't seem all that close, though, to be honest. It was tied 2-2 coming back to Cleveland, but Cleveland seemed to be really in control despite losing those 2 games in Toronto. On the other side of the bracket, let's see here. Portland and the Clippers went to 6 games in the first round. Clippers probably would have won, but Portland had the benefit of basically Blake and CP3 getting injured. And so they sort of got a bye almost, I'd say, to the first round because they were going up against a team whose best players were at that point. Their best offensive option was like JJ Redick or Jamal Crawford, depending on the night. So they couldn't really do it much of anything. So Portland got to the second round in 6 games, and then the second round they lost pretty quick. But you had a good series between San Antonio and Oklahoma City, which went 6 games. And actually, Oklahoma City pulled off the upset. They had only 55 wins in the regular season to the Spurs 67, but they still beat the Spurs, which is pretty impressive. And they advanced to the Western Conference Finals. And then they faced off against Golden State. And don't forget that Oklahoma City, with Durant and Westbrook still, was up 3-1 against the Warriors in that series, and they somehow lost it. They had so many opportunities to win, but they lost. I know I, for one, was cheering very hard for Golden State to lose that series, just because I thought it would be improbable, but they choked. That being Oklahoma City, and then Golden State advanced to the finals, where they faced off against Cleveland. Of course, another 3-1 deficit existed in this series for Cleveland, though, and they actually came back, as everyone knows, the infamous 3-1 comeback that the Warriors want to forget, and then they, being Cleveland, won it all. Some phenomenal games in there, especially games 5, 6, and 7. Some really, really amazing games. If you have never watched that series, go back and watch. You can watch the whole thing or just watch those 3 games because they're really competitive and really good for the most part. As far as stuff during the regular season, of course, you saw the amazing Steph Curry run during that season. He won MVP, averaging 30 points a game, shooting 91% from the free throw line, which led the league actually. You had Drummond league lead in rebounding with 15, Rondo lead the league in assists with 12, Steph lead the league in steals with only 2.1, which is pretty low actually. Hassan Whiteside led the league in blocks with 3.7. James Harden led the league in turnovers at 4.6. Those are some of the notable things. JJ Redick led the league in three-point shooting at 48%. Let's see here. MVP, as I said, Curry. Defensive Player of the Year, Kawhi. Rookie of the Year, Karl-Anthony Towns. Coach of the Year, Steve Kerr. Sixth man, Crawford. Most Improved Player, CJ McCollum. Pretty expected for that season. CJ McCollum had come out of nowhere, and I think he had averaged about 5 points the year before, and then this season he jumped up to average like 21. So that's a pretty great improvement for him. He was very instrumental in the Trailblazers making it to the second round of playoffs. He was the second option behind Dame. As for why I like the season more than others, I think it's just because essentially of the playoffs being really interesting. Like between Miami Charlotte going 7, and then Toronto Indiana going 7, and then Toronto Miami going 7. That was a really cool couple of series that were really competitive. And then Oklahoma City and San Antonio, Oklahoma City upsetting them was really unexpected and pretty cool. And then the series between Oklahoma City and Golden State, and then the finals between Golden State and Cleveland, those are also really cool series and really interesting to watch, and I like them a lot. So those are some of the main reasons that this was one of my favorite seasons. And also, I just remember being so hyped for the finals because you had Golden State having this historic, amazing season, but then on the other side, you had Cleveland, who everyone had said the year before, if they have their guys healthy, they can challenge Golden State and win it. People had kept saying that because Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving had gone down injured in the playoffs the year before, and people said, they could have won it that year if those guys would have been healthy. So we finally saw both squads fully healthy, but before Durant had got there. So it was still like a pretty even playing field because I feel like Durant coming into the equation made it okay, you can argue however you want, but I think adding Durant to the mix made it sort of an unfair playing field as far as the talent basis. But between the 2016 or 15 to 16 Cavs and Warriors, with everyone healthy, that was a pretty even talent pool to go against each other. So to me, that was really cool, and I really liked seeing that and how it played out. I think, you have a couple of things. Bogut doesn't get injured. Maybe they win the finals, or Draymond Green doesn't kick so many people in the balls. Maybe then the Warriors win the finals. But it happened the way it happened. It was super cool the way it happened, and I think it is one of the greatest seasons of all time. One of my favorites for sure. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you have a good day, and I will see you next time. Bye.